Hello everyone and welcome to another game from the European Team Championship. Yesterday we've seen Magnus Carlsen, the highest rated player in the world, draw a game. He escaped by the, what's the expression, yeah, I don't know what the expression is, but I know it's something of his teeth, but I can't remember how it goes. And his team lost the match as a result, not as the direct result to his game, but if he, for example, won on board one, then it would be a draw. But now it would be really great for him, as he does have the white pieces, and his opponent is over 300 rating points lower rated at him, that he grabs a full point for his team. They are playing against Iceland, and he's facing on board one strong Grandmaster Hjorvar, Steinn, Gretarsson, and by the time I'm making this video, all the other games are still being played. One game ended in a draw, but they are a bit drawish. So let's see what happened in this one, and will Magnus be able to grab a full point with the white pieces in classical this game? So he opens with pawn to e4, we have e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and now bishop to b5. Yes, I can't remember. I can't remember what's the saying, like by the skin of his teeth or something like that. Yeah, and it sounds weird now that I say it, but yeah, I can't remember. So a6, Morphy's defense. We have bishop to a4, and now knight to f6. We have pawn to d3, and now bishop to c5. So the standard Anderssen variation of the Morphy's defense of the Ruy Lopez. We have c3 by Magnus, pawn to b5, and bishop back to b3. We have d6, bishop to g5, and now even pawn to h6, bishop to h4, and bishop to a7. So a fairly rare setup, but it has been played before with both white and black by some very strong players. For example, Hans Niemann had it against Turaman, where Hans won. Rapport had it against the Ding. Rapport lost that game, and Caruana had it against John Burke in 2021 US Chess Championship, where Fabi won. So it has been played before in some top games, but they continued with castles and with a4 and castles. But here we have knight b to d2, and it is now as of move 10 that we have a completely new game. So okay, pawn to g5, we have bishop to g3, and now queen to e7. And whenever I see this g5 h6 and b5 a6, I remember that Kasparov game he played against I believe it was Karpov, where he said that it just can't be possible for black to play like this. And okay, those were the pre-engine days where we didn't understand that pretty much anything can be played if you prepare it properly. But yeah, something has to give. It looks very unnatural. And where are you putting your king? Okay, if you castle kingside, then those pawns will become easy targets for the white army. So knight to f1. Magnus says, all right, you have holes on d5 and f5, and I'm going to put my knight to e3 and target those squares. Those are a very important square. So bishop to e6, and now knight to e3. Rook to b8, and now we have castles by Magnus. And here Hjorvar grabs the knight on e3. It's a magnificent bishop to have on this diagonal, but the potential of the knight to become a great piece outweighs the potential of this bishop, perhaps. So he does go for the capture. We have f captures, and now castles. We have knight to d2, and now bishop to g4, putting pressure on Magnus's queen. We have queen to e1, and now bishop to h5, transferring the bishop over to g6, and now knight to f3. We have king to g7, and Magnus goes for knight to h4. So he shows that, yeah, it's not going to be possible to play like this, and you cannot capture the knight. If you capture the knight, then the knight on f6 will fall. Magnus will gain back the material and retain a winning position. So instead, bishop back to g6, and now knight to f5 check, forcing Hjorvar to give up the light square bishop as well. So bishop captures, and the rook captures on f5. So we have this position where, okay, it emerged out of a Ruy Lopez, but it really does look like something that would emerge out of an Italian game, you know, better than the Ruy Lopez, maybe, as now white has the bishop pair and black has the two knights. But okay, knight to d7, you know that the bishop is attacking f7, the rook is attacking f7, the queen will move, and the other rook will also come to f1 to put more pressure on f7. So you do not want that pawn on f7. So here, knight to d7, preparing pawn to f6. The pawn will be very strong here, as the knight will defend it. queen to e2, and now queen to e8. We have rook a to f1, doubling up, and now having a lot of pressure on f7, and now pawn to f6. So here the pawn is defended, but that means your knight will have to remain here for a very long time. But Magnus will not just idly wait. He goes for pawn to h4, knight to e7, and now rook 5 back to f2 as the knight is attacked. We have knight to c5 now, and bishop to c2. First you have to kick away the knight, and then, okay, you can keep the bishop on this diagonal, but as the knight will not be able to remain on c5, you will then reclaim this diagonal for your light square bishop. So knight to g6, attacking the h4 pawn, and Magnus grabs more space with pawn to h5. So knight back to e7, and now pawn to d4, kicking away the knight, knight to d7, and bishop goes back to b3. So slowly but surely improving his position, as it is a very strong position. Rook to d8, black sort of running out of useful moves. You could play maybe rook to c8, preparing pawn to c5, but even that isn't all that impressive. He goes for rook to d8, and now Magnus plays pawn to a4, just going for a captures on b5, then the b5 pawn would hang. And now you could just defend it passively with rook to b8, sure, that's possible. Then bishop comes to e6, and again Magnus will gradually improve his position. But after the 30th move, Hjorvar was already very low on time, and he decided to abandon passive play, and he went for activity with pawn to f5. This is a straight up pawn sacrifice which he's willing to give in order to keep his king safe but activate his pieces. So he says, all right, I'm going to be down a pawn, and maybe I can defend this game against Magnus. We have d captures on e5, sorry, not e captures f5, d captures on e5, knight captures on e5, and now e captures on f5. So that was the free pawn, and now king to f6 blocking this. So yesterday Magnus had a losing game, but he was able to draw. Now he has a winning game that he will see if he can win this. So bishop to e6, after king to f6, we have bishop to e6, and now queen to c6. We have a captures on b5, queen captures, offering a queen trade, but as a general rule, if you're controlling more space, you don't want to trade down, you want to keep material on the board. Queen to d1, and now pawn to a5. We have pawn to b3, your pawns are now nicely defended, and rook to b8, putting pressure on the pawn. But let's not forget about our good friend the light square bishop, also keeping that b3 pawn nicely defended. We have rook to a2 now, putting pressure on the a5 pawn, and now knight 7 to c6. We have pawn to e4, and now queen to c5 with check. It seems that with this pawn to e4 move, Magnus blundered the c3 pawn, but he's actually sacrificing it for counterplay along the c file. So queen to c5 check, he just moves his, he defends with the bishop f2, and queen captures on c3, but now rook to c2. Again, b3 is defended by the bishop, so you have to just move the queen to b4, and now bishop to d5, defending the e4 pawn while putting pressure on the knight. So how do you defend? You can't really play rook b6 as the bishop is controlling that, but maybe it's even your best move. I allowed the engine to crunch the numbers here up to like depth 40, and the engine does give rook to b6 as the top move, just saying, okay, give up that rook, and you will give black this very nice pawn chain where maybe b5 and a4 can be played in the future to create a passed pawn, but still it's not enough for black with precise play. But knight to e7 is played, and now just rook captures on c7. Now the rook is extremely strong here. Imagine if you somehow get this rook over to f7 without, of course, f7 being defended. That would be a very nice checkmate with the pawns covering everything here. But okay, there's still a long way to go for that. Rook f to c8, and now rook to a7, avoiding the rook trade. And now, okay, we reached time control, but Hjorvar is already very low on time. Even upon reaching time control, Magnus has an hour and 10 minutes on the clock. Hjorvar already is down to 17 minutes here. So rook to c3, and now bishop to c4. Now Magnus says, all right, if you want to exchange everything on c4, then I also win the d6 pawn with check. So rook to b6, defending that, and now bishop to d4, just tying up Hjorvar's pieces completely. Rook captures on c4. Yeah, okay, giving up the exchange, but what else do you play? If rook to c6, for example, rook comes to a8, then comes to f8, and there's really not a lot this black king can do here. Then f6, f7, and that's going to be game. So after bishop to d4, rook captures on c4 was played, b captures, and now knight to c6, going after the bishop on d4, but just rook to h7, and he was in in this position on move 47 that Hjorvar, Steinn, Gretarsson resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Also, he was down to 1 minute on the clock when he resigned. Rook captures on h6 is coming, and there's no good way to stop that. One fun way a game might continue is, you can't move this knight. It's pinned by the bishop. You can't really capture on c4 because then the rook on b6 will be undefended. So what do you play? Of course, you're going to capture on d4, and after queen captures, again, you cannot take, and you cannot take with a queen as the rook hangs and the knight is pinned. So you might play rook to c6 to prepare the capture, but now just rook captures on h6 with check, king g7, rook g7, check, king f8, and now you can even play pawn to h6, and if rook captures on c4, threatening your queen, you can even play pawn to h7 and sacrifice your queen, and it's a forced checkmate for white. To give you an example, rook captures, h8 brings another queen into the game, king e7, rook to g7 with check, knight to f7, and now queen to c8 with some queen to e6 action to be followed up with d5, and now queen to c7 check with whatever you play. Is just going to be a very nice checkmate. So that's why, of course, Hjorvar resigned, as there was nothing more to be done there. But yeah, very nicely done by Magnus. Let me just check. By the time I was preparing the video, they still haven't updated the ratings. Let me just see if Magnus won some rating for this. Yeah, okay. With yesterday's draw and today's win, he's up 0.3 points. So not getting a lot, but yeah, I mean, with 300 low-rated opponents, 300 points low-rated opponents, you can really afford even to draw games if you are to win rating. But yeah. Very nicely done by Magnus, and let me just check if Norway has finished the match. No, it's still being played. Yeah, one draw on board 3, but yeah, 2 of the games still being played as I'm recording. So we'll have to see what happened in the next video. But yeah, very nicely done by Magnus. Comparing this to yesterday's game, where he again faced, okay, with the black pieces, somewhat low-rated opponent. Today's game did seem more of a target practice for him, you know, or a sparring match rather than an actual battle. But yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Magnus, up to his usual standards. I would like to thank Kevin Clark, Camilo Hich Schwarzerhaupt, Randall Ingersoll, Stefan Rakocevic, and Andreas Rosenthal for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon. Continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and everything else that happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.